There's a dangerous lie that society still clings to. A myth that states that certain women cannot be sexually assaulted. A myth that claims that adult film actresses ask for it and they cannot be essayed because of their line of work and that their trauma isn't valid. When Christy Mack's story exploded across the headlines, that myth was louder than the truth. Instead of compassion, people were making comments about how she deserved it or how women in that line of work deserve it. It was more focused on her career choices and who she dated. But Christy Mack, legal name Christina Mackenday, was only 21, 22 years old when she met Jonathan Copenhaver, the MMA fighter who renamed himself War Machine. She was a young woman building her career, navigating an industry that often dehumanizes the very women they profit off of. And he was a man spiraling into violence, insecurity, and unchecked rage. Welcome to Not All Men. I'm your host, Jerry. In this podcast, I discuss things like true crime, masculinity, toxic masculinity, and injustice. Thank you for joining me. It's been a while since I posted on this channel. I've been going through moving across the country. We moved to California recently. Actually, you're stacked on a couple of boxes right now. And so it's been a lot of focus on that a tough time, but I'm now back presenting on this channel. The story that I have today is one that I've known about for a while, and I never really looked into the details of the story. And it really tackles something that I feel like I talk about a lot on this channel, and I really wanted to bring this story, bring Christy Mack's story as a survivor, as a woman who went through probably one of the most worst domestic violence situations I have ever heard and came out on top. The case we are discussing today is brutal and heartbreaking, but like I said, hopefully will highlight a survivor. Trigger warning for discussions about intimate partner violence. Also, if you are looking for any resources for anything that we discussed today, I will be putting it on my Substack, which will be linked in my bio as well as linked in the description below. And with that, let's get started with the discussion today. Jonathan Copenhaver, which if I'm messing up his last name, I'm sorry, but Jonathan Copenhaver, aka War Machine, had a 15-5 overall record in MMA and various MMA promotions, including Bellator and the UFC and the welterweight division. His public life was pretty turbulent. He appeared on The Ultimate Fighter, Team Hughes versus Team Sarah, not as one of the original 16 fighters, but as a replacement. While he was on The Ultimate Fighter, he lost his fight by unanimous decision, an early bruise to his ego that many say foreshadowed his obsession with dominance. In 2008, after a dispute with TNA Wrestling over who had the rights to his self-appointed nickname, Copenhaver legally changed his name to War Machine, which he believed aided in his branding and reflected his aggressive style of fighting, according to him. The former UFC fighter, Jonathan aka War Machine, believed the name better represented his identity both inside and outside the ring. He seemed to believe that violence was not only what he did, but it was also who he was, or who he was supposed to be. His life outside of the cage wasn't any calmer. In September 2007, he was found guilty of striking a man in the face and choking him unconscious during a parking lot fight in Las Vegas. The following year, he pled guilty to a misdemeanor assault and battery in another incident. He avoided prison through probation, but the pattern was forming. Violent outburst, followed by excuses, leniency, and opportunity to try again. In 2010, his behavior escalated. He was sentenced to a year in county jail for felony assault after 2 separate bar fights in San Diego. He spent most of that time in solitary confinement. Yet even behind bars, he maintained a Twitter account and wrote a blog documenting his time in jail. These posts that he would write really painted him as this misunderstood anti-hero, according to him. He was the victim of the system that he believed didn't respect him. He never acknowledged the harms that he was causing to other people. It was just always he was the victim. It was always him that was the victim. It was always the things that were being done to him. Upon his release in 2012, he didn't slow down. He already announced publicly in 2009 that he planned on pursuing a career in adult films, alongside his career in MMA, signing with LA Direct Models and shooting with actress Riley Steele. He seemed to crave attention, notoriety, and controversy, and was willing to attach his identity to anything that kept his name in circulation. In January 2014, he appeared nude in Hustler magazine in a pictorial with Christy Mack, the survivor in this story. An intimate pairing that fans at the time saw as edgy and provocative, without understanding the true darkness of their private relationship. Before we get into their private relationship, I want to talk more about Christy Mack. Christy Mack was born Christine Mackenday. She's an American former adult film actress and erotic model who was active between the years of 2011 and 2014. She began her modeling career as a tattoo model. Christy was featured in magazines such as Rebel Ink and Inked Girls, but she also did photo shoots for the websites Brazzers and Bang Bros. In 2012, she started her career in the adult film industry, starring in a number of films such as Hot Body Inc., Inked Angels, and Inked Girls. In April 2013, Christy launched her official website, and in November, Fleshlight released Attack and Booty, Christine's signature sex toy. From the interviews that I watched of her, she really seems like a very smart, well-spoken, sweet person. Comes off very genuine, almost like she could be anyone's friend. She is obviously beautiful, covered in tattoos, and she seems to have such a beautiful light about her, in my opinion. Christy met War Machine in 2013 on the set of an adult film. At first, their connection seemed disarmingly sweet. She later recalled that when she became ill during the shoot, he stayed by her side, brought her pizza, and comforted her. For a young woman who entered the adult industry at 18 and learned quickly that vulnerability wasn't safe, his protective attention felt like something she hadn't had in a while. This was one of the complexities of abusive relationships. They rarely begin with intimidation or cruelty. They begin with warmth, attentiveness, charm, the traits abusers use to mask the control that comes later. And it's always, I'm pretty sure if you're watching this, you probably already know, but in abusive relationships, it always starts out that the person gets them to fall in love with them. They love bomb them. And they get them to feel like this is your one true love, and that the only reason why they are go on to abuse you is because of your protection or because it was your fault. The love and the abuse aspect, they're playing into both of those. Now, their relationship lasted about 15 months from mid-2013 to the spring of 2014. During that time, the warning signs grew. War Machine began isolating Christy and disguised it as concern. He questioned her scenes, her friends, her co-workers, and framed his jealousy as devotion. He pressured her to quit adult films, not because he respected her boundaries or wanted the best for her, but because her work triggered his insecurities, an inflated sense of ownership. He wanted total control of her body, her schedule, her autonomy, and her career. By May of 2014, Christy ended the relationship. War Machine moved back to San Diego.
I was very afraid of him, but I did make the decision to leave.
But the breakup didn't grant her safety. For many victims, the moment they leave is when the danger becomes the most severe. War Machine continued reaching out, oscillating between self-pity and anger.
That night, I was texting with John, flirting with him. It was very common for us, because we had that on and off relationship for a year and a half.
He framed the breakup as a betrayal, something she had done to him. For abusers like him, leaving isn't an ending, it's a challenge. On August 8th, 2014, Christy Mack was at her Las Vegas home with her friend Corey Thomas. I've heard some reports call him her boyfriend. I've heard some say that they were just friends. I'm gonna go with just like the friends aspect of it. I'm just gonna go with the friends aspect. They were in bed preparing for a tattoo convention the next morning. This wasn't a romantic liaison, and that's why I'm saying I'm not really gonna call him her boyfriend, at least at this particular time, because there wasn't really a situation when they were laying in bed cuddling or anything. I think they were casually just like in her bedroom. Corey would later confirm confirmed they were fully clothed and simply talking and resting. But to a man like War Machine, Christie's presence with any other man was an unforgivable violation of the control he believed he still had over her. That night, Copenhagen, War Machine, let himself into her home using an old key. What happened next became one of the most violent domestic assaults. And again, trigger warning, I'm going to go more into detail of the crimes that were committed against Christy Mack. Now, I do want to warn you, these descriptions can be pretty brutal. He found Christy and Corey in bed, like I had stated before, and immediately launched at Corey, punching him in the face, biting him, and putting him in a chokehold, which War Machine is an MMA fighter, so he knows how to choke people unconscious. Corey later testified that he feared he would die. Corey says as the fight wound down, War Machine started reasoning with him, with War Machine saying, "How do I know if I let you go, you won't be a snitch?" To where Corey responded, "I'm no snitch," Thomas had testified on the stand. After 10 agonizing minutes, War Machine told him to leave and not call the police. Corey, he complied. But the event was part of a broader, violent attack that resulted in severe injuries to Mac. He left Christy alone with the man who had already crossed every boundary and was now ready to unleash all of his anger on her. I have complicated feelings about Corey. I understand that he was probably in no condition to put up a fight against an MMA fighter, sure, but he let you go. To say that you are no snitch and then go on to not call the police after he let you go, because it's complicated because Corey is a victim in this situation as well, but he was also had the ability to go get help. And you'll find out in this story that he wasn't the one who got help. He wasn't the one who saved Christy. And that to me just makes me have complicated feelings. At the same time, I know that he was probably also dealing with his own injuries and his own fear and he was just probably saying whatever he could to get out of this situation. I don't know. I just find it to be very complicated. My feelings towards him are very complicated about him in this case. But moving on, Christy, after Corey had left, Christy was beaten mercilessly. War Machine punched her repeatedly, so hard and so often that she lost consciousness at least once. When she tried to crawl away, he kicked her in the side with such force that her rib fractured and her liver ruptured. He told her, "This is my P word, and I'm going to take it back now." A sentence that reveals more about his mindset than any psychological evaluation ever could. He let his entitlement speak for him. He forced her to undress, or he removed her clothing himself, and he made her shower in front of him, humiliated and injured. He stabbed her with a dull kitchen knife. When the handle broke, he continued using the blade to saw off her hair, a violent, symbolic act meant to strip her of her identity, her power, and her personhood, and to further humiliate her. Her injuries were catastrophic. 18 bones around her eyes were broken. Her nose was broken in 2 places. She lost multiple teeth. One of her legs was so badly injured she couldn't walk. The knife wounds left lesions on her hand, ear, and scalp. He took her phone, canceled her upcoming appointments, and tried to erase any potential alarm about her disappearance. Chrissy's only chance came when War Machine stepped into the kitchen. She believed he was searching for another weapon to finish what he had already started. And I don't know how she summoned the strength to do this, but Christy summoned the strength she had left and ran out the back door, naked and bleeding, knocking desperately on neighbors' doors until someone answered and rushed to her safety. Christy saved herself. After this brutal, horrible attack, not only being mentally beaten, but also physically beaten, she found the strength to rescue herself. This attack wasn't some impulsive thing that happened out of nowhere. It wasn't a moment of lost control. It was dominance. It was a punishment. It was an attempted murder. Christy later tweeted photos of her injuries, stating that although he had beaten her before, he had never done anything to this extent. She said she believed wholeheartedly he would have killed her that night if she hadn't escaped. When Christy was able to go get help in that moment in time, War Machine went on the run. And while he was on the run, he had time to tweeting self-pitying messages about being heartbroken and continuing to being misunderstood, which is a little bit of a callback of in the beginning when he was sitting in jail and he also felt like he was being misunderstood. He's just a person who has just really a lot of feelings, and a lot of people just don't get him, according to him. These tweets, luckily, War Machine is an idiot. A complete idiot. I wanted to say more, but I decided not to cuss. But he's an idiot because his tweets led the authorities to find him. And a little tidbit here, Dog the Bounty Hunter even joined in the search. Copenhagen was arrested a week later in Simi Valley, California, after resisting officers. He was extracted and sent to Nevada, where he faced dozens of charges, including attempted murder and essay. On the same day that he was supposed to appear in court to discuss his plea deal, he attempted to self-exit in jail, quoting, and I'm going to mess this up, Nesetchi, in a note found nearby. He survived and was placed on watch. His trial began in February 2017. After years of delays. His defense attorney, Jay Lederman, in his opening statements brought up how Christy Mack and War Machine, their sexual discussions, and he brought up how one of the fantasies that Christy Mack had discussed was an SA fantasy. And I feel like this doesn't need to be stated, but the point of a fantasy is that it's a fantasy, it's not real, and it needs to be stated. Sex fantasies require enthusiastic consent from both parties. It also is not real and can be stopped at any time. With those two things in mind, as well as other things that are in play whenever people do certain types of sexual play. Does any of that sound like what happened here? Does any of that sound like Christy gave her full consent to what War Machine did to her? No, just completely shocked. No, I'm not shocked because he's a lawyer, but it's just a disgusting way of shaming women for having sexual fantasies and saying that because they had this sexual fantasy, that means they were asking for it. Christy testified with a level of strength that was so powerful. She detailed the abuse, the control, the violence, and the terror he put her through. The jury convicted him on 29 of 36 felony counts. He received a sentence of life in prison with a possibility of parole after 36 years. He won't be eligible until he's in his 70s. He is currently incarcerated in the Ely State Prison in Nevada. Christy survived, but the trauma, the surgeries, the reconstruction of her face and her life took years. What happened after the attack is just as revealing about society and violence itself. Many people supported Christy and stood behind her, but a loud portion of the internet blamed her. They claimed she couldn't be essayed because she was an adult film star. They said she asked for it. They accused her of lying. They reduced her trauma to a punchline. This cruelty exposes a deep cultural sickness. Our society still judges the worthiness of victims based on their sexual history, their profession, and whether they fit the mold of the perfect victim. Adult film actresses, sex workers, exotic dancers, and even women who are simply sexually confident are often denied empathy. They are told their trauma is their fault and that they don't deserve protection. Christy's story challenges that. Her job did not remove her right to consent. Her industry did not revoke her right to safety. And nothing, absolutely nothing, justified what War Machine did to her. After the attack, Christy underwent multiple surgeries, including reconstructive procedures on her face. She temporarily lost vision in one eye. She struggled with speech, eating, and mobility, but she didn't hide. She used her platform to advocate for domestic violence survivors, especially those in stigmatized professions.
It's given me a purpose. It has allowed me to help so many more people in similar, if not worse, situations than I was in.
She became a voice for women who are often dismissed, ignored, and blamed for their own abuse. War Machine's story is one of escalating violence ignored until nearly fatal. Christy's story is one of survival, resilience, and courage to face a world that didn't always see her worthy of compassion. Together, these stories expose myths society is desperate to cling to, myths that protect abusers and silence survivors. Christy Mack deserves safety. She deserves respect. She deserves empathy, and ultimately, she deserves justice, which she fought for relentlessly. But the harder truth is this: she never should have had to fight this hard for people to believe her. Her story reminds us that consent is universal, violence is never justified, and no profession, no identity, no lifestyle strips someone of their humanity. Everyone deserves protection. Everyone deserves to be believed. Everyone deserves to be safe. It's like when people push back against the believe all women thing. People aren't saying believe all women, and every time a woman comes forward with accusations, that means that that person is guilty. They're saying believe all women because when you start to believe women, then you're going to investigate her story, and then you will find out the truth of whether or not it happened. But you need to start out believing them, because when you don't believe them, then you don't investigate. Nothing ever moves forward with finding justice either way. And it's better to have those questions answered. That's why we say believe all women. That's all I have for this story today. Really think that Christy Mack is so strong and amazing, and someone that was her own hero in her story. And yeah, I just wanted to highlight that. Like I said, if you need, like I said, I have all resources on my Substack, which will be in the link in my bio as well as down in the description. And yeah, that's all I have for today. Thank you for listening to Christine's story, and thank you for joining me here today. See you next time.